Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking on a pretty complex mission.
Yeah, this one's a big one.
We're charting the incredibly volatile life and, well, the career of content creator and musician Brendan Rose. And we have this monumental stack of his own self-documentation, legal files, song archives, personal notes.
All of it.
And we're using it to map the terrain where somehow absolute personal collapse becomes the fuel for his art.
Well, this is a unique deep dive because Rose's work isn't just, inspired by trauma. It's an intentional autobiographical weapon. He states it openly.
What? That it's a weapon?
Yeah. His deliberate goal was to become one of the most disruptive figures in music, using, everything. Institutionalizations, relationship breakdowns, legal skirmishes. That's the literal source material for what he calls his arcs.
And what immediately grabs you is this core paradox of his celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
Right there in the sources, Rose notes that he is, and I'm quoting, notable for my name being omitted from discussions.
Mm-hmm.
He calls this a religious character aspect. He thinks this silence creates a necessary feedback loop.
It's incredibly self-aware, right? He
Yeah.
gets that by presenting content that's so shocking or controversial that major platforms won't even name him, he forces his audience to work harder to find him.
Which creates a more dedicated following.
Exactly. It creates an almost cult-like following. The difficulty of the signal is the signal. It just amplifies the myth.
That sets the stage perfectly. So our mission today is to trace this frantic timeline from 2018 to 2025, moving through the distinct artistic periods he defined.
You've got the golden age of Loki, the super intense Valhalla arc, the protest-driven Captain Ahab arc, and then his current phase, the Ulia arc.
Okay, let's start with the groundwork then. The music career really kicks off later, but the tone is set back in 2016 with the death of his father.
Right, who just before passing apologized and bought him two very specific video games, Stella Glow and Etrian Odyssey Untold 2.
Then by 2018, Rose had finished college with a game programming diploma he just immediately called worthless, and he moved back into his mother's Dundas West mansion in Toronto.
But the real start of his music career wasn't tech. It was social friction.
A girl.
Pretty much. He was part of the EgoCast Andy Discord server, and for anyone who doesn't know, that was a community around online commentary, streaming culture, and it was there he got this unrequited crush on a girl named Valeda.
And that emotional trigger led to his first musical attempt, The Golden Age of Loki.
Which he admits himself was truly terrible, super boo, but the pattern was set right there. Emotional chaos equals artistic creation.
And that chaos was already part of his routine. He identifies what he calls his foolish vice, this repeated habit of flushing his medication.
Which would just immediately destabilize him. He said his life would be instantly destroyed in a few months. That self-sabotage mechanism is so central to understanding his arcs. It wasn't until, 2024 that he says he realized this flushing pattern was a deliberate, unconscious attempt to force the crisis state he needed for his art.
And that cycle comes to a head almost immediately. September 2018, his mother, who had recently developed Alzheimer's, calls an ambulance for him.
And that's his first institutionalization. And his music, right after, it just shifted dramatically.
How so?
It became furious, angry, and violent. This is where you get these politically charged tracks like Jordan Peterson, Prison of Hate, and the song Corporation, which he claims features a very apt Larry Flynt impersonation.
So he was already embracing shock valve.
Oh, absolutely, from the very beginning.
Moving into 2019, the relationship chaos starts.
Right.
After that hospitalization, he met Joy Lee, a 41-year-old South Korean woman.
And she sheltered him from conflicts with his uncles. Then came Kimmy, who was 46, and he was actually set to marry her. That whole relationship was defined by her desire for IVF.
But they broke up.
They did, just weeks away from the wedding. And there's this powerful, almost prophetic story from that time. They visited a Buddhist monastery. A man gave them each a fortune.
Okay.
Kimmy would get her baby, and Rose would live an easy life. Given what happened next, Rose describes this prediction as just haunting, like the monk saw the storm he was about to unleash on himself.
And that storm was his next marriage to Jialin or Jialin.
It happened fast, end of 2019. He says he rushed it because he was afraid she'd leave him over performance issues. The red flags were there from day one.
Like what?
She exchanged hearts with another man the night before their wedding. Their life was defined by, his words, endless fights, accusations of her stealing money, and she'd just disappear for days at a time.
The tension was already high, and then it became catastrophic in 2021.
And this is the peak of the Valhalla arc drama. Rose, while his wife was pregnant with their son, Muji, they called him Muji, he had voluntarily reduced his medication.
So there's that foolish vice again.
Exactly. After a text fight, she shows up, the door is locked, and she tries to smash it down with a wooden plank.
So Rose called the police.
A decision he says he immediately regretted. She was arrested, spent the night in prison, and got hit with a no-contact order.
And the police offered to drop the charges if she just apologized.
But she refused. For months. And this is where Rose's artistic strategy becomes just astonishing.
This is the bad guy music.
Yes. He created what he explicitly called "I'm the bad guy" music. This wasn't just him venting, it was calculated sabotage.
He wanted this music to be so offensive, so aggressive, that it would turn everyone, including the court, against him.
Right. Hoping that the public outcry or just the sheer confusion would make the prosecution drop the charges against his wife just to make the whole messy situation go away.
That is a profound level of, self-immolation for your art.
It is. He was actively trying to look guilty, to embody the villain, all to manipulate the system to save her. The charges were eventually dropped in January 2022 after she did anger management, but that period defined his art.
And we see that in the Valhalla Arc song titles, they're directly tied to where he was during the crises.
For sure. Arkham Asylum for Good Joker is a clear reference to his hospitalization in the Scarborough ward. And the epic Long Live the New Flesh captures all the condo and legal case themes.
And the specifics in that song are key.
They are. Long Live the New Flesh has repeated references to a birdcage, and it includes the name Lorenzo Dubonici.
Who's that?
We understand Dubonici to be a reference to authority or like statesmanship in his personal dictionary. So he's putting his legal battle on a political stage. The birdcage isn't just about his marriage, it's about state confinement.
Which brings us to Phase 3, the descent into total ruin in 2022. The Captain ACAB arc.
He moves near Chinatown in Kensington, and for those who don't know, ACAB is all cops are bastards, which immediately signals the anti-authority vibe he was going for.
And he claims the hostility was immediate. He felt treated like dirt, facing threats, people tampering with his food.
He blamed local activists, who he called SJWs, for being shocked and offended by his music, which he claims was now professional grade.
He felt like his provocation was finally getting a real physical reaction.
Yeah, and the chaos was just compounded by his living conditions. I mean, due to severe depression, his house became infested with thousands of flies.
A literal cloud of
A
flies.
cloud of flies while he was totally isolated. And at the same time, he's developing Harmony, a massive 60-gigabyte perverted porn game in Unreal Engine 4.27.
Which he couldn't even release.
No. Steam banned him, and Epic wouldn't host pornographic material. So even his digital escape routes were blocked by the systems he was trying to provoke, and the personal costs.
It was horrific. The loss of his pets. That hits particularly hard. He had to get rid of his dog, Loki, and his cat, Tequila.
And the source material just captures this crushing detail of how he had to make Loki think they were just going for a walk. He says he saw the dog look back at him so sad as they drove off.
That's a brutal measure of the chaos he'd created.
It is truly devastating. And after all this, the final crash was financial. He ditched his medication again. He asked his Uncle Sam for bus fare to get his injections, and his uncle blocked him, said, "I bought you the condo, I won't pay another cent."
And Rose says he starved for weeks. He was living on inedible legumes from the food bank, which he described as like eating stones.
This period of just acute deprivation and insanity, it all culminated in his final catastrophic arrest. The police cut open his door and found him sitting naked in the lotus position after unbelievably horrible acts.
He was hospitalized for a month, where he created his hilarious jail arc songs.
Proving once again that rock bottom was his most fertile ground.
Which takes us to Phase 4, the surprisingly steady period starting in 2022, and the Yulia arc. The fallout from the arrest meant the condo corporation sued him and his uncle to get him out.
And what stands out here is the cost of his disruption. The lawyer for the condo corp, Yulia Payson, her team racked up $100,000 in legal fees.
$100,000.
Yeah, not fighting some complex civil case, but just stating Rose's social media presence to build a case for his removal.
Wait, so his entire online persona, all the provocative music, his digital footprint, that was an asset of ruin worth 6 figures to the other side.
Exactly. That's the real-world consequence of his feedback loop. He eventually agreed to leave voluntarily.
After a brief stint of being homeless, he found what he calls heaven.
Yeah, he moved into Ulia's a perfect downtown house, living with an 83-year-old grandma whom he loves. He's been there for 3 years now.
He says, "I have nothing but love and run feelings for that woman."
And this stability, amazingly, it didn't slow down his output. He claims the Ulia arc, also called the Horror at Kingston Road arc, dwarfs every other arc into oblivion.
Hundreds of songs.
Hundreds, like Blood Angel and the Caravan and Caesar's Legion.
And even with the piece, the material is still really unsettling. His song Sleep is a great example. It's got this deeply cryptic dialogue between two characters, Peter and Frank, about trust and ethics, maybe a murder cover-up.
All wrapped up in this strangely soothing instruction to the listener to close your eyes.
And in 2025, his ambition is peaking. He released his game Luciferianism in Unreal Engine 5.4, calling it his greatest artistic achievement.
And he's even using AI music tools like Suno to create copyright-safe songs. One is called Speckled Daisies, which still manages to inject this dark, cryptic imagery about rabbits and butlers into a seemingly benign tune.
So what does this all mean? The core contradiction is just undeniable, right? Absolute personal, material, and legal collapse was the crucible that forged his most prolific and his highest quality work. He fulfilled his goal.
And he seems settled now. He concluded, I'm not going to be the family man, but I have Julia.
It's a kind of peace.
It is, but we have to remember the mindset he had during those legal battles. It's documented in the syndicate source material. He saw his disruptive behavior as political leverage. There are lines referencing the judge like, I'm politically connected and accidents happen, judge, all the time.
So he sees suffering not as a defeat, but as a strategic tool against the system.
Oh, sorry.
So given that his most profound suffering catalyzed his best music, we're left with this provocative thought for anyone following his career. For an artist who is so dedicated to shock and provocation, what is the artistic cost of achieving true, lasting peace?
And does this current happy ending inherently limit the scope of his next great, terrifying work?
It forces you to ask if comfort is the ultimate enemy of the chaotic muse.
A question that only Rose and time can answer.
That was The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time. Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're getting into a source material that is, well, it's about as personal as it gets. We're looking at the self-documented life of the content creator Brendan Rose.
And this isn't just, a simple biography. It's a saga that he has constructed himself, linking his deepest personal crises and his mental health struggles directly to this massive, massive artistic output.
Exactly. Our whole mission today is really to trace that evolution, to look at how he built what he calls his religious canon and how he now, in his words, worships within it.
The first thing that just jumps out from the sources is the way he frames his own story. It's not just a timeline. He structures his whole life into these very distinct, very dramatic, artistic arcs.
Right, with names like the Golden Age of Loki or Captain Ahab, the
Well,
Lone Oppressor.
and the Valhalla arc, which is just, incredible. This isn't just him telling you what happened. It's him saying that for him, life and art are the same thing. The trauma is the muse. The breakdown is the foundation.
And the art that comes out of it it's his diary, it's his documentation, and it's his theology all at once.
Yeah.
But before we even get into the story itself, we have to talk about this meta strategy he uses. He says it's, and I'm quoting here, profoundly important to my character. He's talking about the power of omission.
It's such a unique and honestly a pretty brilliant strategy. He's known for having his name left out of discussions about him.
How does that even work?
Well, he gives these analogies to explain it. He says, if you wanted to talk about him, you wouldn't use his name. You'd say something like, Trump should listen to his supporters more. Or Anthony Hopkins needs to listen more to his supporters.
So you use a placeholder name.
Exactly. The placeholder is irrelevant. The implied subject, the person everyone knows you're really talking about, that's what matters. It kind of forces the audience to fill in the blank, and it creates this magnetic pull around him.
It's like a feedback loop. He says that's what it is. People are sort of compelled to talk about him precisely because his name isn't being said.
And he ties this directly to his spiritual goal. It's like the idea of a forbidden name, the power in a word that isn't spoken.
Which brings us right to his main goal, his explicit goal to become a religious figure.
And he claims he's already done it. By creating this huge body of songs, this religious canon, he's built his own church, so to speak. And he says he actively worships in it.
But, and this is a huge but, he's not a gospel singer.
Oh, not even close. The sources are very clear. He's described as a remarkably challenging and disturbing controversial figure.
But also a profoundly skilled artist and a wry comedian.
Right. His goal was to be among the most, if not the most controversial figure in his corner of the music world. And to do that, the art has to be shocking, it has to be provocative. That's the spiritual act for him.
Okay, so let's set the stage a bit more. Who are his peers? Who are the people in his orbit?
Well, he mentions connections to creators like Romanian TV's V, Leona K, Styx Hexenhammer 666, Doug's Dharma, Akira the Dawn.
And Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, he says Adams will take Rose's name and his memories of him to the grave. It's a very specific, online sphere.
Very specific. So his story, the music part of it, really kicks off just after he graduates college in 2018. This is right after his father passed away in 2016.
There's this really poignant story about his father's final days that seems to be the real starting point for everything.
It really is. It's a moment of, I guess, closure. He was there with his father in the hospital, and his dad had just discovered Amazon. He was fascinated by it.
Ordering gifts for everyone.
Right. And he ordered 2 very specific video games for Rose, Stella Glow and Itrian Odyssey Untold 2. But more importantly, his dad apologized for his past behavior.
And Rose forgave him.
He did, right before he passed. And it seems like that mix of loss and forgiveness, and even that little bit of modern technology, it just wiped the slate clean and allowed this whole creative journey to start.
Okay, so let's dive into that first major period. This is from about 2007 up to late 2018. This is the incubation period.
This is what he calls the decade in roaches.
Which is, a pretty evocative name.
It is. He lived for nearly 10 years in what he describes as a roach-infested nightmare. A literal sea of roaches. Just him and his cat, Neko.
And during this time, he starts a YouTube channel back in 2007.
Yeah, it was, by his own admission, pretty unremarkable. An edgy, kind of trollish gaming channel. But he suspects that even back then, he had these unknown friends supporting him in the background.
Then he graduates in 2018 with a game programming diploma, which he says was worthless.
The diploma itself, maybe. The instructors even told him that. But the skills he learned were absolutely critical. That's what allowed him to later create what he calls his greatest artistic achievement in gaming.
Luciferianism.
Exactly, which he recently published on Steam and Epic using Unreal Engine 5.4. So we're talking about a high level of technical skill here, far beyond some edgy YouTube channel.
But back in 2018, he made a couple of early games, Kingdom of Lies, which got pulled from Steam, and another one.
Right, an unnamed game, which he just ominously refers to as the atrocity that would come back to cause him huge, huge problems later on.
So after his father's death, his whole living situation changes dramatically. He moves into his mother's mansion in Dundas West, a wealthy part of Toronto.
And this change of scenery seems to be what really sets the stage for his music career to ignite. This is the start of the golden age of Loki arc.
Right. He starts watching this other creator, EgoCast Andy, and feels this bizarre connection.
Yeah, he said it was like Andy was talking about his life without ever mentioning his name. That feeling drew him into Andy's Discord server.
And that's where he meets this core group of people. Ducky, RPD, Jesco, and Vala, or Valeda.
And she's the key. The real catalyst for the music was him falling into this intense, unrequited crush on her.
And so because he'd been known as Loki on YouTube, the album he makes is called The Golden Age of Loki.
And he's brutally honest about how bad it was. He calls the songs truly terrible, beyond poo, or super poo. He says he can't even listen to them now without cringing.
But the music was flowing, even if it was bad. But then the whole Discord community just implodes.
Total chaos. He says a nefarious person came in and just wrecked the place. Andy, who Rose kind of looked up to like a father figure, got furious and shut the whole thing down.
And he blamed Vala.
He blamed Vala, and Rose's reaction was immediate and creative in a very aggressive way. He kicked her out of his own Discord server with a song he wrote called Dead Enemy.
And what was her reaction?
According to his notes, she just laughed hysterically at him, mocking him for being worthless. You can just feel the heartbreak in that.
And all of this is happening while his family life is just completely melting down. His mother has Alzheimer's.
Yeah, which he says was justifying just horrendous behavior, abusive nonsense. And his uncles were putting immense pressure on him to put her in a home. It was a process that took years.
We should mention he does note that she's now in a dementia care home and is actually happy and doing much better. She even remembers his visits.
Right. That's an important piece of resolution that comes much later. But back in 2018, the stress was just overwhelming. And it was made worse by this pattern of self-sabotage that he kept falling into.
The medication cycle.
The medication cycle. He admits that for years, he was flushing his medication. He calls it a foolish vice that would ruin me again and again.
And he says it wasn't until 2024 that he fully realized that every time he quit his meds, his life was instantly destroyed within months.
And that cycle starts right here. September 2018, his mother calls an ambulance. first institutionalization.
He calls it hell. And of course, it immediately fuels the music.
The music gets furious. Angry songs and violent songs, mostly directed at his mother for what she did. And then it happens again just a few months later, a second institutionalization, another month-long stay.
And the songs that came out of that one really show his range. You've got the political stuff like Jordan Peterson, Prison of Hate.
And then you have the completely absurd, a song called Cooperation, which he describes as a funny Larry Flynt impersonation about inheriting the house. I mean, turning that kind of crisis into dark comedy it's his signature move.
But his family was not amused.
Not at all. His uncles were furious, and their reaction was just brutal. They kicked him out onto the street.
Just left him there.
Left him to suffer for days before he finally came back. And that act of cruelty is what pushes him into the next very unstable phase of his life.
This is where we get into 2019. He's basically trying to find shelter anywhere he can while his family is trying to make him homeless.
And his first bit of help comes from Joy Lee, a 41-year-old South Korean woman. She gave him a place to stay. He admits he screwed up that relationship, but says they're still on good terms.
Then he starts dating Kimmy. She was 46, and this one got serious fast.
Very serious. They were just weeks away from getting married. They were talking about IVF. She'd already secured the money for it. They were building this whole traditional life together.
But he was only, 32 or 33 at the time?
Right. And he says he felt he wanted more. And he also mentions having trouble performing sexually, which he kind of blames on the age gap.
And the whole thing comes to a head when she just asks him directly.
Yeah, she says, "We're not going to get married, are we?" And his response was just to cringe and laugh nervously. That was it. Huge fight, breakup.
But the thing that really lasts from that relationship is this prophecy.
The fortune teller, yeah. It's such a pivotal moment. He remembers the good times with her, singing at a library, visiting a Buddhist monastery. And it's there that a fortune teller speaks to both of them.
He tells Kimmy, "You will have your baby."
And then he turns to Rose and says, "You will live an easy life." And Rose says that second line haunts him even more now as he looks back on everything that happened. The meaning of easy life becomes the central question.
Okay, so September 2019, a small bit of relief. His mother is finally placed in a care home.
But even that doesn't last. She causes so much trouble, she gets kicked out. And right as he's dealing with all this family drama and the guilt from Kimmy, he gets hit with a professional disaster.
The Steam ban.
The Steam ban. His entire account gets nuked. And it's because of that other unnamed game he made back in 2018, the one he called an atrocity made to piss people off.
And takes down his current game, Kingdom of Lies, with it.
Which he says just devastated him for years. And that ban stayed in place until just a few months ago when Steam finally reinstated his account, which he's incredibly grateful for.
But through all of that, the professional ruin, the personal heartbreak.
The songs kept rolling on, getting better and better, and also more disturbed. That's the key. The creative engine just never stops.
And that engine leads him straight into his most chaotic relationship yet, with Jialin or Jolene.
He meets her at the end of 2019. He says they fell very much in love, but just 2 months in, she's taking pictures with another man, the first instance of jealousy.
And despite these massive red flags and his own performance issues, he marries her very quickly.
He admits he didn't even want to get married. He was just terrified his performance problems would make her leave him, so he rushed into it to lock it down.
The details of the wedding he provides are just so bleak.
They really are. She exchanged hearts with another man the night before. The minister was shocked because Rose was openly staring at the bridesmaid. He had no friends there. It was just a performance, really.
And at the same time, he gets a job at a security company. But that period, he says, was hell.
Complete hell. She would constantly text him while he was at work, starting these ridiculous fights, screaming at him. She was stealing his money and just running off.
And disappearing.
Constantly disappearing.
Right.
For 1, 2, even 3 days at a time with no explanation. His summary of it is just, I hated her.
But they still build this little family. They get a dog, Loki, and a cat, Tequila, to join his old cat, Neko. And in early 2021, she gets pregnant.
And here we go again. The cycle repeats. As soon as she's pregnant, he drops his medication down to almost nothing. His insanity began to build until he just ditched the meds completely.
Which leads to another institutionalization, inevitably.
Right. She eventually had to make the call. And while his mind is spiraling, their apartment life is collapsing. The neighbors start filing complaints.
About his music, and Loki's barking.
They even lawyered up to try and get them evicted. So Rose, to protect the dog, decides to just move out himself.
And this is the beginning of the Chinatown arc, or as he calls it, Captain Acab, the lone oppressor arc.
He moves to an apartment near Kensington Market in Chinatown, and this is where he feels the full force of social persecution. He says the locals, who he identifies as SJWs, treated him like dirt because of his offensive music.
And it's important to state this is absolutely his perspective. This is the lens he's seeing it through.
Of course. But the specifics he details are intense. He says he was mocked, threatened, people would cough on his food. He was accused of impropriety.
And then the metal rod attack.
Yeah, someone literally tried to beat him to death with a metal rod, and when he went to the police, they wouldn't press charges. He felt completely abandoned.
His response, predictably, was to make his music even more aggressive. The album A La Breva. He says the music got really good, professional grade.
But the conditions he was living in were just unbelievable. He was too scared and sad to walk low-key, so the dog was just going to the bathroom all over the apartment. It filled with thousands of flies. He was afraid he was going to die of disease.
It's during this time he also develops that porn game, Harmony.
Right, a 60-gigabyte game in Unreal Engine 4.27. He couldn't publish it anywhere, but he says it was quite good. A huge technical project in the middle of a total personal collapse.
And there's this one tiny, absurd glimmer of support. The girl at the store downstairs, Creeps.
He says she showed like 40% support. She would nod along to his most violent songs like Who You Want to Kill. It's this tiny, twisted moment of connection in the absolute darkness.
All of which is just the prelude to the main event. The Valhalla arc, mid-2021 to 2022. This is the absolute peak of the crisis.
It starts with him moving back into his mother's mansion. His Uncle Sam is trying to sell it to pay for dementia care, which ended up costing, over $500,000.
And this is the condo Sam had promised him, right?
The very one.
Yeah.
The promise that turned into the worst thing that ever happened to me. The domestic situation with Jialin is also at a breaking point. She's visiting strange men. They have a massive fight over text.
And then she shows up at the house.
She shows up, runs upstairs. He locks himself in the study for safety. And then he just hears this primal scream.
She found a wooden plank.
Found a plank and started trying to break down the door. He speculates, to kill me or maybe to hug me. His uncle and a friend tell him he has to call the police. So he does.
And he immediately regrets it.
Instantly. The police arrive, and he's just crying, begging them not to charge her, thinking about her and their baby. But the officer is firm. In a case like this, we have to charge.
So she's arrested, spends a night in jail. A no-contact order is put in place.
And the legal situation should have been simple. The prosecutor told him all she has to do is apologize, and the charges are gone.
But she refuses.
For months. At her hearing in September, she just flat out refuses. So the case drags on for another 5 months.
During this time, he's trying to date. He meets Lelaine from the Philippines online.
Which inspires the album Serial Experiments Lane. But then Jialin sees the pictures of Lelaine, breaks the no-contact order, and starts sending him these heartbreaking images of crying bunnies in baby clothes. Just pure emotional warfare.
There is also that encounter with Haley.
A brief, dark one. He sleeps with a 19-year-old named Haley. She takes all his money and leaves him to walk home for 6 hours in the rain. And again, he notes, I was not able to perform fully.
So then, in this really bizarre act of, chivalry, he decides to sabotage his own legal case.
It's incredible. He starts making horrible music, what he calls I'm the bad guy music, specifically to make himself look like the villain so they'll drop the charges against her.
And it works.
It actually works. January 2022, the charges are dropped because she agrees to take 2 weeks of anger management instead of apologizing.
So with the criminal case over, the next phase of the Valhalla arc begins. His uncle moves him into that condo in Scarborough.
And this is where the most heartbreaking loss happens. He can't keep Loki and Tequila.
The story about Loki is just, it's brutal.
It's gut-wrenching. He has to trick him into thinking they're going for a walk, gets him into the car with the charity, and just watches Loki look back at him, so sad as they drove off. He says he felt like it crushed his soul.
And at the same time, his financial situation is impossible. He's on ODSP, so about $1,100 a month.
And his Uncle Sam is charging him $600 for rent and another $180 for internet. That leaves him with just $300 a month for everything else. For food.
Which is not possible.
Not even close. And the clinic for his medication is a 3-hour walk round trip. He runs out of money, asks Sam for bus fare. Sam refuses and blocks him. So with no money and no energy, he stops his medication completely. Again.
And this is where his philosophy is proven, at least to him. The worse it gets, the better the music gets.
This is the moment. Broke, starving, off his meds, thinking this is the end. And he starts making what he calls incredible music that was terrifying, beautiful, shocking, the best music of my life.
The starvation was real, though. He was begging his uncle for food.
And Sam just said, I bought you the condo, I won't pay another cent. So he's living off the food bank, eating these rock-hard legumes that were like eating stones. He said the pain from hunger was unbelievable.
And this absolute low point is what leads to the climax of the whole arc. He makes his final works, then he says he did something horrible.
He wasn't caught that first time, but then, still starving, he makes more music and then did something unbelievably horrible.
And this time, the police come.
They cut his door open. They find him sitting naked in the lotus position. He's arrested and spends a month in the hospital where he finally gets food and medicine.
And even then, he's making music. A hilarious jail arc of hip-hop songs.
The creativity never stops. But that incident leads to this wild legal battle to get him kicked out of the condo.
The lawyer, Yulia Pessin.
Yes. And she was surprisingly honest with him. She calls him up and says, off the record, I only care about getting paid, and I get paid no matter what.
So he saw her as a friendly party in this whole drama.
A professional wrestler relationship, he called it. And she made sure she got paid. Her team made a V-line for all his social media and charged the condo corporation hundreds of dollars an hour to study his content.
How much in total?
They racked up about $100,000 in legal fees.
$100,000 to evict one guy.
And that cost was passed on to all the other residents in the building. A few $100 in extra rent for everyone.
And he says he felt bad about that.
He did. He felt bad for them and was worried about how the judge would see it, so he agreed to leave voluntarily.
And then there's that final detail about seeing the new judge with pronouns in her bio and feeling relieved that the case was truly over.
It's such a perfect, absurd ending to that whole legal saga.
So after the expulsion, there's a brief motel stay, paid for by Sam,
where he admits he pulled one serious burn, but then he gets kicked out of the motel, gets an Airbnb, and Sam gives him a final 1-week ultimatum. Find a place, or you're on your own.
And this is what leads to the Yulia arc, what he calls his new heaven.
He finds Yulia's house, the perfect downtown house. Huge bedroom, balcony, kitchen, good tech setup, everything he needs.
And Yulia herself, the 83-year-old grandmother who owns the house.
She's the anchor. He calls her the most wonderful grandma I ever met. He's lived there for 3 years now and feels completely safe. He says he loves her and even wonders if he's living in sin with her. She just provides this unconditional stability.
And that stability leads to an unprecedented creative explosion.
Unprecedented. He says the Yulia arc dwarfs every other arc I ever made put together. The songs are so much better that the stuff from the Valhalla arc, his previous best work, now just sounds bad to him.
He lists some of the titles: Blood Angel and the Caravan Sleep, Caesar's Legion, Final Gas Station Attendant. The volume is just immense.
And the stability also creates a huge behavioral change. He stops blasting his controversial music while walking around in public, a habit he'd had for years. And he says that one change helped him avoid a lot of fights.
So, bringing us up to the present, 2024, 2025, he's focused back on game development.
And he succeeds. He finally releases Luciferianism on Steam and Epic. His masterpiece is finally out in the world.
He had one more brief relationship with a 22-year-old named Anastasia.
But the same old issue came up. He failed to perform after they slept together the first time and just couldn't bring himself to go back. It seems like that chapter of his life is truly closed.
And his latest project is fascinating. He's using Suno AI to make music.
Right. Copyright happy songs where he owns all the rights. It's a way to mass produce his art while maintaining total control. He sees it as maybe his biggest project ever.
And that brings us to his conclusion on his own story. He accepts he's not going to be the family man, the dad living with his wife.
But he has Yulia, he's safe, he's happy, he's more creative than ever, and he ends it simply. So it had a happy ending.
What an absolute roller coaster. I mean, to go from the roach-infested apartment through multiple institutionalizations, the chaos of his marriage, the Steam ban, the actual starvation and legal battles.
All culminating in a $100,000 eviction. And then to find, of all things, peace and stability and heaven in the home of an 83-year-old woman.
The central paradox here is just staring us in the face.
Yeah.
His whole philosophy was that the art gets better as his life gets worse. The Valhalla arc was the proof. The best music of his life came from the absolute depths.
But the Yulia arc challenges that. The sheer volume and, by his own account, the superior quality of the music he's making now comes from a place of profound safety and stability.
So what happens when the crisis ends? It seems like the art doesn't stop. It just changes. It goes from being reactive and survival-based to being prolific and, I guess, sustainable.
And that stability is what allowed him to finish Luciferianism, to master new technologies like Suno AI. The goal of being controversial is still there, but the engine driving it has fundamentally shifted.
Which brings us all the way back to that fortune teller, back in the Cumi arc. He told Rose, "You will live an easy life."
A prediction that Rose says haunted him, because how could a life with so much trauma, so much pain and chaos possibly be considered easy?
But maybe the fortune teller saw something different. He didn't achieve happiness in the traditional way with a wife and kids. He found it in his art and in the unexpected sanctuary of a kind landlord.
So we'll leave you with this to think about. Rose calls his current life safe and creatively free his happy ending. If surviving the absolute worst was the price of admission, and if success isn't measured by society's standards but by your own creative output and internal peace, what does it really mean to live an easy life? Maybe it's not about avoiding hardship. Maybe it's about what you build from the wreckage. Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're plunging into the remarkable and often really painful life story of the content creator Brendan Rose.
And our mission today is pretty specific. We want to trace his journey from being, an edgy troll on YouTube to a highly controversial musician and game developer.
Exactly. We're focusing on how his life is defined by these intense, chaotic, creative arcs, and how he somehow, against all odds, found a kind of stability.
It's a deep dive that's sourced, for the most part, from his own really extensive personal memoir. And he frames his whole existence as this series of distinct phases, these arcs.
And here's the paradox that grabs you right away. He's this creator whose name is often deliberately left out of discussions about him.
Yeah, it creates this kind of self-sustaining feedback loop of controversy and curiosity.
He doesn't just embrace it, he actively uses it. He says his goal is to be a challenging and, frankly, a disturbing figure in music.
Right, he's trying to create what he calls a religious canon of songs, basically a huge body of work that's all about his own personal mythology.
And you can really see his reach by looking at the network of creators he's connected to, people who are kind of on the edges of internet commentary.
People like Romanian TV's, V, Liana K, Sticks X and Hammer 666, Akira the Dawn. It gives you a real context for his sphere of influence.
The sources even suggest that figures like Scott Adams have been close to him at times, which just highlights these deep and very unusual connections he makes.
And the sources we're using, they really focus on analyzing his art through these specific arcs.
The most critical one is probably the Valhalla arc. It's almost the thesis for his whole creative life, right? How this extreme personal collapse, we're talking institutionalization, family conflict, became the engine for his most furious work.
So let's unpack that. Let's get into the timeline that led to that collapse. It really starts with a catalyst event back in 2016.
The pivot point was deeply emotional. It was the death of his father.
And Rose was able to be there to comfort him. And crucially, his father apologized for past mistakes right before he passed away.
It sounds like a real moment of closure, almost symbolized by the last gifts his dad bought him from the hospital, a couple of new video games.
Yeah, Stella Glow and Itrian Odyssey Untold 2.
And that moment of grief, of acceptance, it comes right before the total instability. Before this, he'd spent a decade living in a completely different world.
A roach-infested nightmare of an apartment, as he puts it, with his first cat, Neko, just running a YouTube gaming channel he'd started way back in 2007.
His career path totally shifts in 2018. He finishes a game programming course.
And even though he calls the diploma worthless, those skills he learned, they became foundational.
They allowed him to create his early games, like Kingdom of Lies, which is gone now, and more recently his masterpiece, Luciferianism.
Which was made in Unreal Engine 5.4, so, very advanced stuff.
So now the environment changes again. After his dad dies, he moves in with his mother in Dundas West, and he starts following this creator, EgoCast Andy.
Right. He joins this Discord server, and he really looks up to Andy, like a dad, he says. And this new social scene, it immediately sparks that first creative arc.
The first spark phase, or what he called the golden age of Loki.
Exactly. He developed this intense, unrequited crush on a girl on the Discord named Vala, or Valeda, and all that emotional turmoil just catalyzed him into making music.
Music which today he calls super poo and truly terrible.
It's fascinating, isn't it, that his first creative burst is something he now completely rejects. It really shows how much his own standards would change later on.
But two critical things happened while he was at his mother's house that really paved the way for the storm that was coming.
First, his mother's behavior got really aggressive because of newly acquired Alzheimer's, so the
Yep.
living situation was just deeply volatile.
And second, he starts this pattern that would define the next few years of his life. He intentionally starts flushing his medication.
And he says, looking back, that every single time he did that, it almost instantly destroyed his life within just a few months.
It's just astonishing that he recognized that pattern of self-sabotage in retrospect. But the chaos wasn't just in his house, his mom's illness, him not taking his meds. It all led to him being institutionalized.
And this is the official start of that Valhalla arc. This is where the story gets incredibly dark.
It really does. In September 2018, his mom calls an ambulance. That's his first institutionalization. A second one follows pretty quickly after that.
And the music becomes a direct outlet for all of this. It's just furious, angry, violent songs about hating his family, hating the world.
Yeah, we're talking about really specific, targeted tracks like Jordan Peterson, Prison of Hate.
And another one called Cooperation, which he claimed was sung by Larry Flint. And that song, which was about inheriting his mother's house, apparently just infuriated his uncles.
That fury immediately spills over into housing conflicts and legal trouble.
His uncles start pressuring him to put his mom in a care home, and then they tried to make him homeless. During this time, he found some temporary shelter with an older South Korean woman, Joy Lee.
But the instability just keeps rolling. He then starts dating a woman named Kimmy, and this relationship got very serious, very fast.
Incredibly serious. They were planning IVF, they were weeks away from getting married, but then it all just imploded.
The sources say the breakup was because of his dissatisfaction and what he called his trouble in bed.
But the key moment from that period is, well, it's weirdly prophetic. Before they broke up, they went to a Buddhist monastery. A fortune teller there told Kimmy, "You will have your baby.
And then she turns to Rose and says,
You will live an easy life." He admits that prediction haunts him now. He gets the irony, given the absolute chaos he was living through.
and as if that personal devastation wasn't enough, just as his mother is finally getting settled into a care home in September 2019, his career takes a massive hit.
A years-long hit. Steam banned his developer account because of some issue with an unnamed game he was working on.
And that devastation lasted for years until his account was finally reinstated pretty recently, which is what allowed him to publish Luciferianism.
And this whole relentless cycle crisis, institutionalization, professional sabotage, it leads directly into the next major phase of his life.
The marriage and betrayal arc.
Yeah. He met Jialin, or Jolene, at the end of 2019, and they got married incredibly quickly.
He rushed it. He rushed it because he was worried his problems performing in bed would make her leave before they could get married.
Yeah.
It just speaks to this deep insecurity he had.
The sources paint this picture of immediate conflict.
Yeah.
Just total distrust on both sides.
Even at the wedding, the night before she was exchanging hearts with another guy online, he admitted he spent the whole time gawking at the bridesmaid.
And he noted he had no friends there. None. Just his family and her friends.
So the next year, 2020, is just defined by endless fighting while he's working this security job.
She was stealing money from him, disappearing for days at a time. And during all this chaos, they get two more pets, Loki the dog and Tequila the cat, joining his old cat Neko.
Then in January 2021, she gets pregnant with their son, Muji.
And right on cue.
He ditches his medication again, leading to what he calls mounting insanity. And this was all compounded by this huge housing stress.
Right, because his uncle was selling his mother's house to pay for her dementia care, which was costing hundreds of thousands of dollars.
This all peaks with what he calls the plank incident. After a huge fight, she comes home after being gone for hours. He locks her out of their space.
And her reaction is just, wow, a primal scream. She grabs a wooden plank and tries to break the door down.
A terrifying escalation. And it's important to note, the sources say his uncle and a work buddy were the ones who told him to call the police.
So it wasn't some impulsive decision. It shows how the conflict was bleeding into every part of his life. She gets arrested, spends a night in jail, gets a no-contact order.
The legal situation was supposed to be simple. Authorities told them the charges would be dropped if she just apologized.
But she refused. And that dragged the case on for months.
Meanwhile, he's living in a new apartment near Chinatown in Kensington and diving headfirst into this new musical persona, the Captain ACAB the Lone Oppressor arc.
He even admitted he created what he called "I'm the bad guy" music on purpose. He was trying to sabotage the legal case against Jialin, hoping they'd drop the charges if they thought he was unstable.
And that music, combined with him being unmedicated, brought him this intense hostility in the neighborhood.
People were mocking him, threatening him, coughing on his food. Someone even tried to beat him with a metal rod, all because of his polarizing content.
And amidst all that, we get this really visceral detail of his collapse. He was so depressed and scared that he stopped walking Loki enough.
In the house filled with thousands of flies, he genuinely thought he was going to die of disease.
The case was finally dropped in early 2022 after Jialin took an anger management course.
But this is where the final harrowing descent really begins. He moves to a condo in Scarborough.
And the space is too small. He's forced to give up Loki and tequila. He describes Loki's reaction as just devastating. He said the dog was crushed in his soul. He was left with only Neko.
And the financial stress was just off the charts. He was on disability with only about $300 left each month after rent and internet.
He reports starving for weeks, eating nothing but legumes from the food bank, a period of just genuine hardcore poverty.
And predictably,
He ditches his meds. Again. This combination of starvation and being unmedicated leads to this final, desperate burst of incredibly high-quality music. He says it was the best of his life and, inevitably, one last catastrophic crisis.
this combination point sounds completely surreal. The police eventually cut open his door and found him sitting in the lotus position, naked.
He was arrested, spent a month in custody at Scarborough Centenary Hospital, where he composed what he calls the hilarious jail arc music.
The fallout from this was all legal and financial.
Yeah.
A lawyer, Yulia Payson, filed a civil suit against his uncle, naming Rose as well. He said the lawyer was just professionally cold about it.
Yeah, she told him she only cared about getting paid. He called it a strange professional wrestler relationship.
And the costs here, I mean, they show you the effort it took to get him out. The lawyer's team studied all his social media, racking up about $100,000 in fees.
$100,000. And that cost was then passed on to the other condo residents as extra rent. It was literally the price they had to pay to expel him.
He ultimately agreed to leave voluntarily.
Which led him through this brief, confusing period of looking for a place to live, motels, Airbnbs, until he found the place that kicked off his final and most positive arc.
The Ulia arc.
The happy ending arrived downtown. He found Ulia's house, which he describes as the perfect home. He calls it heaven.
He lives there now with Ulia, who's 83, and he calls her the most wonderful grandma he's ever met. He even says he wonders if he's living in sin because of how much he loves the stability.
And this domestic peace directly correlates with his current creative peak. He emphatically states that the music from the Ulia arc
Works like Blood Angel and the Caravan in Caesar's Legion.
he says it dwarfs every other arc into oblivion. His new work, which is born from happiness, makes all that old dark music sound bad to him now.
His focus now is on promoting his new game, Luciferianism, and using modern tools like Suno AI to create copyright-friendly songs. Stuff like Speckled Daisies and like I Love My Shelf. He calls it his biggest project in years.
So if you connect all this back to the bigger picture, you get a life story defined by this extreme polarity. You've got intense artistic output that was fueled by absolute chaos, crisis, institutionalization.
And that eventually gives way to a stable domestic life that has somehow amplified his creative quality, not diminished it.
Which leaves you, our listener, with this central question about the creative process.
Yeah.
Considering the incredible intensity and, the professional grade of the music he made when he was starving, when he was facing violence, when he was institutionalized, was all that chaos a necessary ingredient for his current success?
Was that suffering the only way to forge the skill that now produces his heavenly art? Or was the skill always there just, waiting for stability to finally polish it? That's something to mull over long after this deep dive is over.